Hey everybody, we are here at Alesha Penland's house. I've asked her this week to be my interview to share hope and healing with people who have lost children. And Alesha is a special friend of mine. She actually introduced me to my husband. So you can ask questions about that later. But right now I really want her to have this opportunity to tell a little bit of the story and what she went through. And then she's going to talk a little bit about her healing since that time. Okay.
You want me to go?
Go.
Okay. Well, I just want to first thank Ashley for letting me come or allow me to do this today. I've never really done a live video, so we'll see how it goes. But so I'll just start from the beginning. So in February of 2014, our son, Lincoln, who was 8 months at the time, received a skull fracture. I got a phone call one day from my husband when I was at work, and he was in a panic saying that I needed to get home right away. And so I rushed home, and as I talked to him on my way home, I came to the conclusion of he had a skull fracture. We didn't know that he had a skull fracture at the time, but he wouldn't wake up. And so we rushed him to the hospital, and that's when they did a CT scan and found out that he had a skull fracture. And I remember the doctors, there was like 8 or 10 doctors when we got to the ER that like swarmed into the room and took him out of his car seat and everything and started working on him. And it took him quite a while to figure out what was wrong. And then they went and did the CT scan, and that's when the doctor pulled my husband and I aside and said that, Lincoln had received a skull fracture, and that there was going to be an investigation that would be underway. And right then and there, we realized that something had went wrong that day. We had absolutely no idea that anything was wrong with his head. All we knew is he wouldn't wake up. Like, he was breathing, but it was really like labored breaths. But we kept hoping and praying that everything was going to be okay. But after they found out that he had the skull fracture, they said that he needed to be life-flighted to Primary Children's. And so I was able to go with him in the helicopter while my husband came down separately with his parents. And we had our oldest son, Boston, that was 3 at the time. We had him with us that day as well. He was at the daycare too. And so we sent him home with my parents. They took him home from the hospital, and we just focused on Lincoln. When we got to the hospital, they kind of just rushed him and took him away from me when we got there, and they did another CT scan and reassured that yes, he did have a skull fracture. And so we spent the next 3 days waiting for like the swelling to go down, because they couldn't run any more tests until the swelling of his brain went down. And we weren't allowed to hold him or anything. We just had to stay right there by his side, and we were hoping for the best, still not knowing exactly what happened, where we couldn't have contact with this daycare provider. So we got there. The injury happened on February 19th, 2014, and on February 22nd, 2014 is when they were able to do an MRI, which would show just exactly how much brain activity and things had, what was going on. And we had lots of family and friends coming down to visit us, but during that time where there was an investigation going on, we were told that like we couldn't talk about anything. And so every information that my husband and I received while we were there, we couldn't share with anyone, like not even our family. All anyone knew was that he had a skull fracture. But like as we met with the detectives and doctors and stuff, they all agreed that it wasn't an accident, but that it had to have happened by an adult, because the injuries he had sustained were severe. It was a very severe head trauma that he had sustained, and that was really hard, especially not being able to talk to anyone about it, only ourselves, and we're trying to process things. and wrap our mind around it, but it just didn't make sense. And I think we both were in denial, thinking that, it couldn't be, that somehow this was an accident. But they did the MRI on the 22nd. They got the results back. They sat my husband and I down, and they told us that the damage that was done to Lincoln's head was a lot worse than they had anticipated. And we had two options. We could, one, either take him off life support, or two, we could take him home knowing that he would have no quality of life. He wouldn't be able to breathe on his own, so he would have had to have a trach. He was having seizures, so he would have had to have seizure medicine for the rest of his life. There were certain stipulations that went along with it. And they knew that he was blind at that time as well. And all these factors, as hard as it was to know that we were going to lose him, we knew deep down that it was the right thing to do, that it wouldn't be fair for us to keep him here with us and be selfish, even though we really wanted to keep him. I remember that when the doctors told us that, I immediately just started saying no, over and over and over. I was in huge denial, and I was screaming, I think, if I remember right, I was just screaming no, this is not happening, it's not, he can't, And my husband had to pull me over and just try to console me, but neither one of us were very consoling to one another, knowing that, this is every parent's worst nightmare, to lose a child, and especially in a magnitude like this, where doctors and specialists and police are telling us that it wasn't an accident. It was really, really hard. And as the days went on, we were allowed to hold him after they told us, that he wasn't going to make it. And I remember holding him that first night after they gave us the okay that we could hold him, and I savored every second, because I knew that eventually we were going to have to let go. And it was really hard, but I was so comforted to know that I could hold him again and savor those minutes with him. So for the next few days, we let our family and immediate family and anyone that wanted to, that was a close friend, to come down and kind of say their final goodbyes to him before we took him off life support. We kind of were just waiting until we both felt okay to do it, and we ended up staying in the hospital 9 days. On February 27th is when we decided that we were going to take him off life support. And so, like I said, we had a 3-year-old son, Boston, at the time. And we wanted him to be able to have his chance to be able to tell his brother goodbye too. And so we drove home from Primary Children's. We came and picked him up, and we tried to explain to him in a way that he would comprehend of that his brother wasn't going to be coming home. And, at the time, we didn't really understand how much he comprehended about it, but we underestimated for sure how much he did understand. We kind of just explained to him, in our belief, we believe that there's a life after, and so we explained to him that, Boston, rather than Lincoln coming home to stay with us when he gets better, he actually is going to be going home and living with Jesus and Heavenly Father. And we both were like, Boston, do you understand what we're saying? And he kind of just shook his head yes. And we kind of left it at that. We didn't go into any details. We didn't know if he even knew anything, if he saw anything that day at daycare, and we just left it at that. But as the days and weeks went by, we realized that he understood more than we gave him credit for. and his little mind, even though he was 3, was processing everything and taking in everything, and he was making his own assumptions on his own without even us having to tell him what was going on. So when we got down to the hospital, we walked in, and because of all the medical equipment that Lincoln was hooked up to, the life support, and he had wires hooked to him and everything, it was very intimidating for him, and he didn't want anything to do with Lincoln. And I really struggled with that because I just wanted it to be like this moment where he could tell his brother that he loved him. And I got him to walk into his room, and they had switched him from a crib to a bed so that we could stay with him that night and sleep with him. And so I carried Boston over, and I just sat him down on the bed next to him, and I just said, do you want to give your brother a hug and or a kiss, or tell him that you love him? And he was just too shy, but I did finally get him to he did reach over and touch his arm, and as he sat there, he just said, no, I'll touch him when he gets better. I'll touch him when he gets better. And I tried so hard to keep it together because it was breaking my heart to know that he wasn't going to see him again. But he just wanted out of that room because he was so scared. And so as he was walking out of the room, my husband was taking him out of the room, he did turn around, and he did say, goodbye, Lincoln. And he did tell him that he loved him. And that was a very hard moment. As we realized that would probably be the last time that he would see his brother alive. So on the evening of February 27th, we decided that we were ready to take him off life support. And although we didn't want to, we knew that, we needed to let him go. It wasn't fair to keep him suffering. And so that evening on the February 27th, we took him off life support around 5:30. The doctors came in and started that process. And we were told, every child, every person is different when on life support. So they couldn't give us a timeline of when exactly he would pass away. They did talk to us beforehand, asking us if we wanted him to be a donor, and we had agreed that yes, we wanted him to be a donor. And in order to do that, he needed to pass away within 2 hours, otherwise he wouldn't be a candidate. And so I remember sitting on the bed, just watching these doctors and nurses work together. There was only a couple of them, and it was kind of like a surreal moment. I almost felt like it was a dream in a sense, because I just sat there. Everyone was dead silent. We were just staring. Obviously, my husband and I are bawling. But once they got everything off, all the tape, all the ventilator, everything off of him, except for a couple wires that were attached to his chest and the oxygen that was hooked to his foot. I couldn't help but notice how peaceful he looked. The whole time in the hospital, he had tape that covered his mouth and kept his ventilator. And so to finally be able to see his face, it was so beautiful. And I sat there even after they took everything off and they walked out to give us our privacy. I just sat there, and we both just sat there and stared at him. I didn't dare touch him because he just looked so peaceful. you know, that only took a couple of minutes, you know, if that, before I finally, I'm like, no, I need to hold him. And so we spent the next few hours just holding him, you know. Around the hour and a half mark, the doctor came in and said, you know, it doesn't look like he's going to be letting go anytime soon. He still had a really good heartbeat, and he was breathing pretty well on his own. And so we just sat there on the bed, and we each held him. I held him most of the time. My husband held him for probably about a half hour before he gave him back to me. And then all three of us just stayed in that bed, and I held him all night and just listened. Like, I laid him on my chest, and I could just hear him, like, breathing, and it just sounded like he was in a deep sleep. And I was grateful that I could feel his every breath, and I just tried to take it in, because I knew as each breath that he took, it was going to be one closer to when he was going to be gone. I remember it was like 1:30, 1:45 in the morning, and he was still hanging on. And I had the thought, because my arms had went to sleep by then, and I had the thought just to lay him down and it would be okay, you know. And so I kind of positioned to myself where I laid him just to the side of me. And it wasn't maybe like 5-10 minutes later that I had a thought, like, no, you need to pick him back up again. And I picked him up, and I held him. And I held him until he passed away. And then I looked at the clock of what time it was. It was 2:30 in the morning on February 28th that he passed away. And I was so glad that I was able to hold him as he took his last breath. And I was so grateful that he had a peaceful passing. It was really hard to realize that he was gone once he took that last breath, you know. And I turned around and watched the monitors behind me as they slowly dropped until they hit 0. And the nurse came in and had a check to make sure that he had passed, and she had confirmed that yes, he was gone. And she just told us we could keep him as long as we wanted. And then she walked out again to give us our privacy with him. And I just laid him down in the middle of us, and we just laid there with him. Like, I was trying to process everything and realize that he was actually gone, and it was hard. It was so hard to comprehend, but at the same time I felt peace knowing that he didn't have to suffer anymore, and that he was finally home, and he was happy, and he would never be hurt again. And for that, I was grateful in that moment that I was able to feel of that peace and comfort. And I know that we were definitely helped that week we were in the hospital, as we had so many people praying for us, and we definitely could feel those prayers, and were supported in the worst times while we were down there. Sorry,
we need like clean it. I'm gonna go find some. You keep that. Okay, I'm gonna ask a question. Thank you, by the way. That was very brave of you to share all that. What does it feel like? I mean, as you walk away from this room, where this all really, I mean, it didn't take place there, but everything that you watched at the end took place. How do you describe walking away and then like driving home? I'm gonna go find you Kleenex while you're talking.
Yeah, it's just right on the corner.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh, of course you asked me that question. So we didn't want to leave. Honestly, that place was so sacred to us. And thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
It had become like a home away from home. I will always be grateful for the love that we felt at Primary Children's. The doctors and nurses, like, they were our family because we weren't able to talk to anyone except them, and they're the only ones that knew exactly what had happened. And so there were many times I spent in the hospital staying up late talking to the nurses because they understood and they knew. But it definitely was such a hard feeling to walk away. We did it, at the time when you're there, you're like thinking like, oh my heck, I just want to get home. You're living out of a bag, suitcase, whatever at the hospital. But then when it actually comes time, like where you are no longer needed there, like you have no reason to stay there, it was hard. And I remember after the nurse and a couple of the detectives that morning came and got Lincoln and took him down to the medical examiner, we were kind of at a loss. Like, we didn't know what to do. Like, there was no reason for us to stay in his room, and so we kind of just started like gathering our belongings and things that people had given us, and it was hard. I remember we cried with our nurse that we had that day and just gave her a huge hug. And same with the doctor. When we went out, the doctor was standing out in the hall doing rounds, and Chris and I didn't care. We just ran. We walked up. The group of doctors that were doing the rounds immediately stopped when they saw us, and we just embraced her, and all three of us just hugged and just bawled as we realized that we probably wouldn't see this doctor again that had taken such good care of Lincoln, and she was trying her best to console us, wishing that there was a better outcome for us. But even going back to Primary Children's, there's a special feeling there, and it's a feeling that we long for all the time, because I can't describe the feeling there, but like I said, it was such a sacred place for us, and we felt the closest to him while there.
So, you and I kind of bonded over this loss of a story we always had planned by the choices of someone else. And you and I have talked a lot about forgiveness, but what would you say your journey to forgive this woman has been? Or where are you on that process?
As in the beginning, it was really like I was in denial. I was really in denial that it was this person. But as the investigation went on, everything we were told between doctors and the police, everything pointed back at her, and they had ruled out every other person. And so there came a time where we had to accept that, and it was really hard, really, really hard for me to accept that, because I had felt like this person, she had watched our oldest son, Boston, before when he was little at daycare, and I had felt like she had done a really good job with him, and I never had any concerns. So it's hard when you put your trust in someone, especially with the most valuable thing you own, which is your children. Like, it's a huge betrayal, and luckily for me, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I was blessed to kind of let go of that guilt and anger that I held. Now, I don't feel like I've completely forgiven her. No, I think it's kind of like a process, you know, and I think that process is it's gonna take a lifetime, to be honest. Like, I don't think there ever will come a point like where I'm like, yep, I forgive you this day, and this is the day I forgave you, and I don't have any more ill feelings towards her. But I don't feel that way. I feel, especially over these past, 3-4 years, it's you definitely it's like a roller coaster ride. I feel, with me at least, like I go up and down, and I for the most part I'm pretty. I feel like I not all the way there, but I don't. It's hard to explain because I feel like Lincoln has already forgiven her, and so it's my job. Like, I need the only person, if I hold back forgiveness, the only person that it's going to hurt is myself. And so as I realize that and I try to look towards that, I'm okay. And I just have to deal with the fact that there's going to be days that, like, something happens and something triggers these emotions that I've felt, and it's okay. That doesn't mean I'm completely back at square one where I'm angry and I haven't forgiven her, but I still feel like it's a process, and it's going to take time, and it could well even take a whole lifetime.
And one thing I've loved about watching Alesha through a lot of this process, and I haven't been here through a lot of it, but on some of those days, she's called me and said, "What are you doing? We're going to the park. Me and Boston have painted all these rocks with little messages, and we're going to surprise people." And I've seen her, like, I don't know, take the bad days and choose to make them light for somebody else. And that has taught me a lot watching you, because I can't even imagine. Like, I look at my kids some days after hanging out with you or talking with you, and I literally can't imagine ever losing one of them. But your strength and your ability to have another baby. I know a lot of moms talk about after loss, it's almost like they feel guilty moving on for another baby. But I don't feel like you looked at it like that. You brought this little baby into your home, and she is like the cutest thing ever. First of all,
she is.
And I don't know, I see you giving her your whole heart, which is amazing. So what would you say to a mom that's maybe struggling with the guilt of moving on? What gave you strength?
It was hard. It was really hard decision to make to have another child. I did feel guilty for the longest time, but I just kept feeling like there was more out there, and I just had strong impressions that we needed to have another child, and I was scared to death because I was worried that I would compare this child to Lincoln, and if it was a boy, I was terrified because I didn't know if I would be able to, like, keep and use all the same stuff he used, like bedding and different things like that. But as I leaned more on my faith and Heavenly Father and just trusted that, everything's going to work out, it did. I couldn't have been more happy. And to be honest, like, this little girl that we brought in, she's 2 now, but this little girl that we brought into this world has saved us in more ways than I could even imagine. She was born in June of 2016, and Lincoln and her birthdays they're both June babies, and they're only like 5 days apart, and so it was crazy to me because she was like his identical. Like, they really could have been twins. She looked just like him as a baby. She had the same mannerisms as him, and as she hit each milestone, it was crazy to see the blessings. When she hit that 8-month mark, that was really hard, and I remember, like, just holding on to her at nighttime, like, not wanting to put her down, because I remember that with Lincoln, and I would hold him every night before bed, and I would never want to lay him down. But as I held her, at that same age, I couldn't help but feel so much gratitude for Heavenly Father for allowing us to have this sweet spirit come into our home and help heal a part of our hearts that was broken that I didn't think was going to be able to be repaired. But she has been a huge, huge blessing in our lives. And, you know, I think both her and Boston, like, bring a smile to our faces every day. And I think that that's what kind of keeps us going, as if I can find joy in just something simple, you know, like whether she do something funny or, you know, Boston says something funny, as long as I can, like, allow myself to feel that happiness again. So I think for those that may be struggling to feel guilty, I would say, like, it's okay. It's okay to find happiness again. It's okay to move forward. You're never going to forget them. Obviously, they're always going to be a part of your life, but I think that they would want you to be happy and find true happiness again. I mean, it's not easy. It definitely is not easy, and it takes work. And like what Ashley said, you know, for me, the thing that has helped me the most, besides my children, would be service. From the very beginning, I realized, like, I can't do it alone, and to put a smile on someone else's face, if you see it or if you don't see it, you know, is something that has helped me tremendously. I know people help do a lot of service to us, and that helped too, but I think for me, for myself, me doing service to someone else is what helped me, because it take my mind off the suffering that I was feeling or pain I was feeling, and it just helps me to focus on somebody else and realize, like, my eyes have been completely open to the world around me, and realize that we're not the only ones that have struggles. Like, unfortunately, you don't realize it until you go through something like this, that you're not the only ones, you know. And although we haven't met anyone that's been in our similar situation with how our child has passed away, we've met so many people. You know, I'm so grateful for the friendships we have made, and the people that we have come in contact because of this tragedy. I wouldn't change. I mean, yes, I would change. I would bring Lincoln back in a heartbeat. If I could change our story, I would do that. But I'm also grateful for the friendships we have made, because I know that without going through this, there's no way we would have been connected with these people. And even, you know, even though you didn't lose a child, you know, I was drawn to you and reached out to you because I had no one else. I had never known anyone else that has went through a court trial, and it's definitely made you come out of your comfort zone. Like, I have done a lot of things that I never would have done before, and like, even like speaking and things like that I never in a million years thought I could do. But you're kind of forced to, and it's okay, and I've actually enjoyed it.
Forced to be brave.
Very much.
Do you feel like the trial was healing at all for you?
No, not really. Luckily, you kind of gave me a heads up as far as, like, you know.
Pulled the Band-Aid off?
Yeah, it opened my eyes a little bit. I mean, it definitely was a huge burden, because it took 3.5 years for us to finally go to trial. We didn't go to trial till this last May in 2017, and it was a long road to get there. And especially for our family and friends, you know, we couldn't talk to them about anything, and so it was hard to keep everything bottled up when we had so much built up anger and frustration. And so I was glad when it finally came, because, you know, over the last, it just kept getting pushed, and then finally it came to an end. So that, like, took a huge burden off of our shoulders, where we didn't have to keep it secret anymore. And it was finally just, it was like a fresh breath of air. But at the same time, I felt like that's kind of when our journey started, is after it all ended, because now we had to figure out how to move forward and pick up the pieces when we had this trial
Just
looming
kinda
over our heads.
in
It
limbo.
was, you just are forced to like relive it every day. And so in a way it was good. I mean, I was so glad when it was over, but at the same time, like, it didn't change anything. Like, I mean, yes, this person was sentenced to prison, but it still didn't change any feelings we had.
Yeah. Okay, do you have any other advice for maybe friends who are trying to support a mom who's lost a baby, or a lot of people come to you with questions like that.
Yeah, I get asked a lot, like, what can I do to support? Like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. And honestly, there really isn't anything you can do or say, unfortunately. But if you're just there to listen, like, all they need is someone to listen. And I think what helped me the most is when people would actually say his name. Like, so many friends and family, they were scared to talk to us, and they were so worried that they were going to stir up emotions, and so they would kind of just dance, or, it's like this big elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it, but it's there. So I would suggest talk about their loved one, talk about them, say their name, talk about memories that you had of them, because that's what's going to help the parents or whoever is struggling, because it's a weird emotion, but you start to feel like as time goes on, you question whether or not they were even a part of your family, especially if nobody talks about them. Like, there's been numerous times where I'm like it feels like a dream, because it's been so long since he's been here with us. But I know that when people talk about him or say, I remember this, do you remember when he used to do this, or remember when he used to just watch his brother all the time, and everything, those bring back the feelings of comfort, like, okay, yes, he's not forgotten, like, people are still remembering him, and we'll always remember him, we'll always celebrate him, but it's nice when others remember too. So I would the biggest thing I would say is just be a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, and talk about them. I have this necklace one of my cousins gave me.
We'll have to zoom in on it at the end.
Yeah, my cousin that lives out of state sent me and my mom a necklace, and it's a picture of Lincoln. It's just his face, and that is another thing that has helped a lot, because I don't go basically out of the house without it, because I feel like he's with me all the time, close to my heart and stuff. So that was another thing that was really comforting to me. A lot of people have done drawings for us as well, which I love too. Just to have them a part of our home, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. You guys, if you have any questions for Alesha, can they leave them in the comments and you'll come? Do you have Facebook?
I don't have Facebook, but I do have Instagram.
I'll send them to her and she'll tell me what to answer. Or you can go over to our Instagram. Do you want to tell them where to find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so I have Instagram. It's just ALC Pen on Instagram.
Okay. And is there any other place they can find you or follow in your healing journey?
As of right now, no. I'm working on a blog. I haven't got it up and going yet. And I also am working on a book. It's close to being done. My goal is to get done writing, be done with my part by Christmas, actually. And whether that happens or not, I don't know. But hopefully soon.
Your mom says she loves Lincoln so much. And you.
Thanks, Mom.
Okay, thank you guys. Follow Alesha on this journey. She's amazing. And thank you for being here and watching with us today. Can I zoom in on Lincoln real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, we're zooming. Zooming on the necklace. Oh, I think it's too shiny. Hold it.
Let's see. There
okay,
you
there.
go.
Oh.
There.
Cute. Okay, and then here's a little picture of baby Lincoln right here. Just had to end with that. Have a great day, you guys.